Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to New Brick Workshop. I've had quite a few people ask me which of the Festool routers they should buy. Some say they're buying a router for the first time, others say, well, they've got one, but they're not sure which of the others to get. Now, there are three general purpose woodworking routers that Festool make. The OF2200, the OF1400 and the OF1010. Now, these two I've had for a long time, and the 1010 has been kindly provided by Festool UK, so I can make this video and also one subsequent video which I'll do just about that router. Now, I'm not making this video to try and persuade you to go out and buy a Festool router, far from it. I'm making this video because you've already committed to buying a Festool router and you need some advice, and that's what I'm going to give you now. Right, I'm going to quickly run through the physical characteristics of these routers, and I'll start with power consumption, and this is an easy one to remember because the power consumption in watts is within the router's name. Then we have the range of the speed, the collet diameter that the routers can take, the depth adjustment range, the fine height adjustment range, the maximum cutter diameter, whether it should be using the 27 or 36 millimeter hose, and then, quite important for a router, the weight. Now, the OF1010 is the smallest of the three routers, and Festool described this as a router that can be used with one hand. I much prefer to use my routers two-handed as it gives me more control. Now, built into the base is a dust extraction port. I really like that. The power connection is here in the handle using the standard Festool plug-it cable, which is provided with the kit. Depth adjustment can be set on the fine side to within 0.1 of a millimeter. And when you've set the depth, you can lock it off by turning this handle here. Now, cutter changes are straightforward. There's a nut on the collet there. You insert the cutter into the collet, and then there's a shaft locking knob here, which you press in, and it engages a small spigot which goes into the shaft, and then you can tighten the collet up. And the hose port takes the 27 millimeter hose. You have to bend it very slightly to get it to fit, but once it's on, it will stay on quite comfortably, like so. Now, with the OF1400, we're taking a big leap forward in router capability. Now, this router has the full range of collet sizes, all the way from 1/2 inch down to 6 millimeters. It has the same plug-it connector in the handle as we saw with the OF1010. And again, it's got the same type of mechanism for clamping the depth in the right place. Similarly, the fine adjustment here is to within 0.1 of a millimeter. And this time, dust extraction is via this plastic add-on piece which can be removed, which makes cutter changing just a little bit easier. Now, cutter changes on the OF1400 and indeed the 2200 are made very much simpler because of this ratcheting lock here. And it means that you insert your cutter into the collet, and then there's a little indication on this rocker here to tell you whether you're going inwards or outwards with the bit. We're going inwards, in other words, we're putting a bit in. So I press it on that side, and then it's just a simple matter of tightening this. And you hear that ratcheting effect? You don't have to keep taking the spanner off, and that makes the whole process really simple. Now, with the OF1400, the maximum diameter cutter is 63 millimeters, which means that I can't use any of my panel raising cutters in this router. But I can use every other cutter I've got. All of these fairly heavy cutters, I can use them with absolutely no problem at all. Now, the OF2200 is the king of routers. It is so powerful, yet so gentle. and if you've seen my video about this writer, you'll know that it's one of what I consider to be the marvels of engineering which Festool have produced. Now, the OF2200 will handle absolutely any cutter that you wish to place in it. Now, some cutters I would not recommend that you use freehand, like these panel raising cutters. You really ought to be using these in a writer table, but it will take anything. Now, the OF2200 has the power switch built into the handle here, and also the column locking built into this handle here. So you can do everything you need to do while still holding the writer firmly. It's got the same 0.1mm height adjustment concept that the other writers share. The dust collection is integral to the machine, and really this is where you now need to use the 36mm rather than the 27mm hose connected there. And the dust collection is improved by the addition of this spring-loaded shroud here. Now, all three of these writers share two really important features. First of all, the motors use Festool's MMC technology, which means that they will hold their speed even under load. The second is that Festool have this thing about making sure that dust extraction is really, really good. And all three of these writers are well known in the industry for their superb dust collection capabilities, especially the 2200, which is the one which is generating the most dust. Now, the key differences, apart from the power which you know about already, the OF1010 will only handle 8mm and lower collets, and the collets that go in here are not the same collets that fit in to the OF1400 and the OF2200. The OF1400 and 2200 share the same collets, and you can get a collet for any size of cutter that you wish, from 1/2 inch all the way down to 6mm. And there are some odd sizes which are available if you look carefully at the Festool website. Now, I have run all three of these writers plugged into the socket on the front of my CT26 extractor with no problem at all. It's a frequent question which is asked about this 2200 writer. There's no problem at all. I run it through my CT26 with no problem whatsoever. Let's answer the first simple question. You're only going to buy one writer. Which one of these three should it be? To an extent, it does depend on what you intend to do. But if you want a general purpose writer that will stand you in good stead, even if your woodworking habits change, then I would recommend you go for the OF1400. It can take any of the cutters that you see in front of me now, with the exception of these two large panel raising cutters. You can mount it in a writer table, and you can use it for some quite delicate work. If you want to buy one writer and your likely use is for applications where you might be just doing a little bit of trim on the side of a piece of wood or whatever, then maybe you should be looking at the OF1010. It's got a really super range of cutters, but it will only take 8mm and less shaft size. But you can see the sort of cutters that are available with the range that I've put in front of you now. Now, if you're setting yourself up in business as a kitchen fitter, and at the moment you can only afford to buy one writer, then it's got to be one of these two. For most kitchen fitting applications, the OF1400 will do a perfectly good job. But if you're doing a lot of work, particularly with worktops like this, which need to be trimmed and templated into shape, then you really ought to consider the OF2200. I would doubt whether the OF2200 would be the first and one and only writer for anyone. I think this is a specialist writer which actually should be there to do the heavy lifting work as part of a group of other writers. And this was my first Festool writer. At the time I owned 5 or 6 other writers, but I had a big kitchen installation job to do, and I needed something with the power that this machine has. So if I had to sum up each of these, I would do it in this way. Jack of all trades, OF1400. Fancy work, light work, general, go-to writer, the OF1010. For heavy lift work, go for the OF2200. Now, if you're looking for two writers, it really does depend on what sort of heavy work you're going to do. If the heaviest work you do can easily be managed by the 1400, then get this one and the 1010. If you're into the serious heavy work, like a kitchen fitter and a shop fitter, then you certainly need the 2200, and then it's a decision you would have to make whether you can settle with the limitations of the 1010 with its 8mm collet size and lower, or whether you want a more general purpose writer like the OF 1400. In fact, if I were a shop fitter, I would probably make sure I had at least one of each of these three. Now, in all of my videos where you see me making drawers using the lead dovetail jig, I've been using this OF 1400 writer. But having now had the OF 1010 here for a few days and handled it, I would have absolutely no hesitation in saying that the dream team for dovetailing would be the OF 1010 with the Lee dovetail jig. Absolutely superb. Now, if you want to put a writer on a writer table, then my choice would be the OF 2200, and indeed that is exactly what I use within my Festool CMS unit, and it does an absolutely super job there. But you can use the OF 1400, which does a pretty good job too, although you do have some compromises to make when you then try and use panel raising cutters with this. Now, although the OF 1010 will fit into the writer table, and if you can only afford one writer and therefore it's got to spend some of its time in the writer table and sometimes out, then fine, go for the OF 1010. But if you can afford to leave a writer in a writer table, then you need one of these two. Now, if you're doing template work, and I've got a couple of hinge cutting templates here, then you probably will need either the OF 1400 or the OF 1010. You can use the 2200, but for this size of template, really that's just getting a bit too big. For trammel work, I have, and this is the trammel I've used with the OF 2200. I have done it with that machine quite a few times, particularly useful if you're trying to do a curve in kitchen worktop. But for general purpose trammel work, I would turn to the OF 1400 or perhaps even the OF 1010. And I've got a trammel I made up which can be adjusted for whatever task, and it will fit either of these two writers. Well, let me just try and sum this up now. First of all, things that I really like about these writers. All three of them have got very good dust collection. The OF 2200 is the best of the lot. I particularly like that the OF 2200 and the OF 1010 has it actually built in to the chassis of the machine, whereas with the OF 1400 you've got this add-on piece of plastic, but it still works fine. I really like the ease of tool changing with these two writers, and that's particularly important when you mount either one of these in a writer table. Having that ratchet mechanism is so much simpler than the old-fashioned type of bit change which you've got on the OF 1010. The constant speed under different loads of all three machines is superb, and it's something which frankly every writer should have, because it does improve the performance of the cut when you're doing production work and when you're doing something fancy. Well, I hope this comparison of these three writers will give you some food for thought when you're making your mind up which one you might want to buy. I will be doing a product tour video of the OF 1010 in due course. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.